Welcome to the Vault XL. Sean Finnegan, 56, is accused of abducting, raping, torturing, and killing 35-year-old Jennifer Paxton before stuffing her body in a freezer for months. Please check out my shorts in the YouTube queue and my videos and posts on the Newsbreak app. 16 people were chosen to determine the fate of an Oak Ridge man, accused of abducting, torturing a woman, killing her, and keeping her body in a freezer for months. Sean Finnegan, 56, charged with the murder and is now facing the death penalty. On Monday, the jury was selected for his trial, which is today. The state alleges that Finnegan worked with his then-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman, in the gruesome torture slang. Investigators said the couple lured 35-year-old Jennifer Paxton to their home in 2019. Oak Ridge police said once at the home, the victim was held against her will, physically attacked with a baseball bat, tortured, raped, deprived of food, medical care, strangled, and then left for dead. Investigators said at their home on Fairview Road, Paxton was chained to the bed, shackled with a dog collar. The kidnapping was used to facilitate ongoing sex acts against the victim, according to the warrant. The warrant also said her body was mutilated with a sharp instrument. Police found her body in the house about 9 months after the killing. In court on Monday, the prosecution and the defense directed questions to roughly 70 potential jurors. The state began its questioning around 9:30 a.m., asking jurors if they should be stone-cold decision makers who could act with no sympathy, prejudice, and bias when it comes to the verdict and potential punishment. The state asked if the jury would have any issue hearing and seeing the very graphic, unsettling pictures of the victim's body and hearing about the hypersexualized nature of the case. Assistant District Attorney General Kevin Allen told the jury that they will hear from Dishman when she testifies against Finnegan as part of her plea deal to avoid the death penalty. The state also characterized the victim as a woman who was working in prostitution to fund her drug addiction and asked that the jury could see her as deserving of protection. Wow. The defense began questioning around 10:45 a.m., making the jury laugh several times during questioning. The defense attorney, Kit Rogers, reminded jurors that their duty is to assume Finnegan is innocent, despite the line of questioning about the death sentence, unless the state proves otherwise. Rogers spoke directly to jurors, saying, I have to know you can sit as jurors, not just as punishers. 16 jurors were chosen just before 2 p.m. Senior Judge Don Ash is presiding and said jurors will be sequestered and will sit in the courtroom for the duration of the trial. Judge Ash said after closing statements, he would randomly draw 12 names to decide the jurors. The 4 remaining names will be alternates. Along with Allen, Sarah Keith is working with the state to prosecute. Defense attorney Forrest Wallace is working with Rogers to defend Finnegan. The jury appears to be made up of 8 white men, 7 white women, wow, and 1 woman of color. Jurors will be sequestered for the entirety of the trial. Court resumes Tuesday at 9 a.m. The 10 News will have continuous coverage throughout the trial, expected to take just over 2 weeks. So 16 members chosen. My understanding that back in May, 1,000 people were pooled. 90 showed up today in court, and 60 members have been chosen. So there is a 12-member jury seated in the death penalty trial against Sean Finnegan. Rebecca Dishman, his co-conspirator, has already received a life sentence plus 50 years last year. She will be attending court to testify against Mr. Finnegan to give a rendering of what happened in that small apartment on Fairview Road in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in the death of Jennifer Paxton. This is a diabolical case in a very small town that only has, under 40,000 people. It is a nuclear town. It is a government town for those who do not know about Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And as I have told you before in my commentary, I had been to the scene to give you all a view of the house the fourplex apartment complex where these heathens resided. Allegedly, an elderly mother was staying in the house alongside a dog. I talked to neighbors pertaining to what they heard, and each heard something. Young lady next door heard banging, but she didn't do anything, didn't confront them, didn't tell the landlord. Don't know how long that banging went on. Neighbors across the fence, one person said they heard someone screaming around Christmas time, but they didn't get up to look. Imagine had somebody at least banged on a door, complained. Maybe this lady would be alive, or at least her body discovered. This is a sad, sad story. I heard that she was a mother of many children. Don't know where her children are, don't know their ages, but nonetheless, she's still a human being, as you heard the state render in this article, that despite whatever she did in her life or profession, she still was a human being. And that's what people need to always remember. People will judge you, whether you're alive or deceased. This is just what people do. But nobody deserves to be lured to a home or a location under the guise of getting help. No one deserves to be mutilated, tied up, not fed, not given medical attention, parts of their body cut off for sexual gains, pleasure, and a deprived mentality. No one deserves that. That wasn't fair to her. That wasn't fair to her children. That wasn't fair to her mother and parents. She deserved to live. God was the one who was supposed to decide when Miss Paxton was to leave here, not Sean Finnegan and Jennifer Paxton. And what's so sick about the story, besides the acts that were exacted upon this lady, is the fact that this was an older man and a younger woman who have also engaged in sexual deviances against children. This is how Miss Rebecca got a extra charge, 2 charges of sexual deviances against children, 50 years last year in court. So besides her life sentence in the murder of Miss Paxton, she got an additional 50 years for engaging in sexual acts with children. 2 charges. And I suspect he will also be facing the same fate for molesting children as well, touching children inappropriately, Mr. Finnegan. Don't know how these two came about being involved with these kids inappropriately. But this shows you the mindset that they're both ill. So they don't even differentiate, which type of person they want to assault. They're assaulting children, they're assaulting adults because they're sick, they're evil. And he's older than her, Miss Dishman. That's what's even worse. He's old enough to be her father. How do you talk someone into doing this type of crime? And this is something that people need to understand about people. In your mind, you're probably thinking, oh, nobody would ever tell that they hurt a child or hurt a human. Why would they do that? Why would they share the secret? Well, guess what? You have people who coerce people into going along with a crime, and you have people who will tell people about a crime. So really, there's no difference between asking someone to help you into a salacious crime versus repeating you committed a salacious crime and they never tell anybody or go to the authorities. At least in this case, Rebecca told someone, and then that person alerted Campbell County authorities by the grace of God. And that is how Miss Paxton was discovered, thawing out in trash bags under the bed. She had been kept in an upright freezer for 8 to 9 months. It is suspected that she was murdered between December 1st, 2019 and December 31st of the same year. Don't have an actual date. Only these 2 monsters know the actual date of the unaliving of Miss Paxton. And I'm sure many of you are still questioning, why? But what do I always say about a deviant human being, creature? Don't ask why not? Because that's how they're thinking. Why not do it? I did it because I could. I did it because I can. I don't need a reason. You need a reason. And that's going to be the burden of the prosecution to prove why Sean and Rebecca exacted this acts against an innocent person. The defense does not have to give a motive. That is the job of the prosecution. So we will wait to hear what the prosecution will render pertaining to the motive. If it was just for sex, afraid to ask her to engage in a threesome, that's been mentioned before. So we'll tie her up. But then where does the torturing come in? You don't think a person will go along with your sex games, your deviant sex acts, but then you got to torture the person as well? Why torture the person? But what did I just say? Don't ask why. Ask why not. Because I can. And they did. You then have to go into the belly of the beast to say, where did these people come from to be this sick, to be such tortured souls, to commit such atrocities against a human, against children? Two people who didn't know each other, each different ages, but linked up. 6 degrees of separation. The universe brought these two heathens together, Mr. Finnegan and Miss Dishman. And we also learned that Finnegan, he's done this before to another woman from Knoxville, held her captive in a home in Blount County. She was able to talk her way out of being in his presence and escape with her life. She pled for her child. She said she had a child and the child needed her. She was able to escape. And that happened many years ago, and there was no justice in that case. So now you got to ask yourself the obvious. How many children have they assaulted? Whose children were those that they did assault? How many other people have they done this to? Torture, tied up, God forbid, unalive. Has Mr. Finnegan unalived another woman or a man or a child? Miss Dishman, what about her? Where do they come from? What type of lives have they had? Would you call these street people? People who never had direction, no parental guidance, lived a horrible life, mistreated, abused. And usually you hear this in cases of sexual assault, child molestation, murder. The people were mistreated themselves as children. But we have learned that when you become an adult, people really don't care about that. Because they feel like you should act right, do right, know better. Do they know better? Did they know better when they lured Miss Paxton into that home on Fairview Road? Did they know what they were doing? I say yes. Did they care? I say no. Would they have done it again had Miss Dishman not told on herself and Mr. Finnegan? Of course. And will there be justice in this case? I say yes. Will he receive the death penalty? I don't know. But he rightfully deserves it. And Miss Dishman, she deserves it as well. But we know in the legal system that who hollers first is the one that gets the deal. So she was spared by telling on Mr. Finnegan and herself that they did unalive Miss Paxton. When I get more information, I will bring you an update. I will be watching and keeping up with the trial and the wranglings of who said what and did what. I'd like to see what the defense has to say pertaining to why he and Rebecca unalived this poor woman and tortured her and kept her in this freezer inside of a home. Once again, as I said, I was told that an elderly woman was also living in the home, his mother, that came from a neighbor. And as the neighbor once said, well, I didn't know much about them, but he seemed okay, nice, had a dog, blah, blah, blah. Well, he ain't nice. How about that? So you now know you're living across from a murderer with a dog. How about that? You now know that across the yard sat a murderer with an elderly woman in his home and a younger woman that could have been his daughter. So he wasn't that friendly. And that's the point. You don't know people. And it doesn't matter where you meet them, at a bar, at the grocery store, work, home, church, online. A rogue is a rogue. A dog is a dog. And people need to start understanding that. Because I talk about that all the time on this network. Does not matter where you meet people. If they are foul, they are foul. And they will be foul online. They are foul offline. And a smile is not necessarily friendly. It is a ruse as well to get you in a place where you can't be heard nor seen. To play funny games to sadly end your life. And that is what happened with Miss Paxton. She made a grave mistake by hooking up with these people. And to this day, I've not heard how they got into cahoots. And he obviously did not have a car, because when authorities came to the home to inquire about Miss Paxton and the body being in the freezer, naturally they didn't have a search warrant that first day. I believe it was on a Wednesday. They came back on that Thursday with a warrant and found her thawing out in bags under his bed. So that means he kept her body in a freezer with no intention of ever taking it out and disposing of it. Why not? That is the question I have. Did Mr. Finnegan own a car? Could he drive? And why did they keep her body in that freezer? And also, why did Rebecca tell a neighbor that they unalived this lady? How did she describe the events? Did she tell the whole truth, or did she leave out some truths? Because I won't doubt that she did. Because what stupid person tells a complete stranger, oh yeah, by the way, we tortured this lady, tied her up, raped her, assaulted her, cut body parts, and then strangled her, put her in an upright freezer. Oh, and then months later I left. I thought I shared this with you. Come on now. But what do I always tell you about people? Many cannot hold a secret. Many people cannot hold a secret, even heinous ones. And it's hard to believe that people would tell their deviances to another human being, whether they trust them, know them, or not. That's my commentary. Thank you so much. I will be bringing you updates pertaining to Sean Finnegan death penalty trial now going on in Clinton, Tennessee. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Big Angie 129 Cash App. Thank you for your time.